This episode is brought to you by GM Genuine Parts and AC Delco. Get the most out of your vehicle with GM Genuine Parts and AC Delco original equipment. The only parts designed, engineered, tested, and backed by General Motors. You can find your perfect fit for most makes and models and choose from 3 tiers of parts, including GM OE or gold and silver aftermarket parts. Visit gmparts.com for more information.
We're back on Let the Record Show. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. With me is Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. And we're joined by John Chachas, who is a good friend and neighbor in my building here in Manhattan, where we're broadcasting from. John is a remarkable gentleman. He runs Methuselah Partners. He has an investment bank. He has an investment firm. He's a chair of a legendary department store in San Francisco. A number of years ago, he ran for the United States Senate as a Republican candidate in Nevada. A graduate of Columbia and the Harvard Business School, an expert in finance and media, and just an all-around wonderful guy. Welcome to the show, John.
Well, that's a nice introduction. I appreciate it, Richard. It's very nice of you.
Okay, give me that $20 you promised me, and we'll be fine.
I think
right.
that was worth 100.
Okay.
That was worth 100.
Okay. Well, I'm against inflation, so we'll sell for the 20. So, John, you're the chairman of Gumps, and you know the San Francisco scene as well as any business person out there. Now, I'm very troubled that the cities of the United States are dying, and San Francisco, amongst other cities like Portland or Seattle or Philadelphia, Chicago, God forbid New York, are indicative of this trend. But let's focus on San Francisco. I just saw an article over the weekend which troubled me about they have these packs of teenagers, mass teenagers, who are mugging and robbing and beating up young mothers with their kids. Can you tell me what's going on in San Francisco and how do we save it?
I have a long love affair with San Francisco that goes back decades, and our investment in Gumps. My family bought the company. We're the 6th owner. It's a 165-year-old business. It is the oldest continuously operating business in San Francisco, and we're having to really assess whether we can continue to be there because our customer base, which is national because of our age, but our local customer base, we call up these customers, and they don't want to come into San Francisco. They don't want to be troubled by the driving. They don't want to be fearful when they walk down the street. They don't want to have to step over human waste and needles. I mean, basically, San Francisco is a poster child for bad urban policy that's failed. And you add that together with bad COVID policy, which I want to come back to for a second, and it's a really dangerous brew in San Francisco. We have bad COVID policy also in New York. There's bad COVID policy hangovers in other places. San Francisco is on the cusp of what I call, a real deep failure. People during the COVID period were taught they didn't have to be in the city anymore if it was unpleasant, and it has become very unpleasant. And to me, cities function if they have 4 things: commerce, livability, transportation, and safety. There's a lot of other things you want. You want good schools, you want good health care, you want all kinds of things. But those 4 you got to have: commerce, livability, transportation, and safety. And right now, San Francisco gets an F on all 4. And that is not a recipe that can survive. And there are things that can be done to fix it.
Well, why don't you tell Jesse and me and our audience, what can we do to save San Francisco? And again, as you correctly point out, San Francisco is really a metaphor for the whole country in these urban centers. What can we do?
I think it starts with. I think it starts with. It's like an alcoholic staring in the mirror and knowing what they are. Cities cannot survive on 3-day-a-week work weeks or 4-day-a-week work weeks. The math doesn't lie. It's that simple. And so we have to start with the premise that these empty storefronts. I mean, you walk up and down Madison Avenue, you see the same thing in New York. The empty storefronts are a derivative of a depressed work environment. People aren't going to their offices. So the first thing that ought to happen is Governor of California ought to institute a tax cut. And it ought to be tied to businesses who in their policy handbook require 5 days a week in your office. And I haven't figured out the math about whether it's a 20% tax cut for 3 years or a 25% tax cut, but it requires the governor to make priority of putting people back in their chairs. And it's an inconvenient thing to say to people, God, we really need people in the city. This thesis of evolved work and hybrid work, it's just math. The math doesn't work. You don't generate enough tax revenue or activity in a city so that the city can thrive on 3-day-a-week work. So create a tax incentive so you can actually bring people back to their chairs. And not all companies will take advantage of that, and there are going to be issues about how you do it. But it can absolutely be done, and I think a large number of companies would welcome the incentive and require their employees to go. Or there's some employees that are going to say, forget it, I've gotten used to not working for 5 days a week. Okay, fine. There'll be some challenges to fill the seats. But over time, if you use the tax code the proper way, I think cities can really induce people back into their chairs. And that creates a virtuous circle. People go to lunch, they go to dinner, they go to an event, they go to a sporting event, they buy something for their spouse, or they buy a gift for. There's commerce going on everywhere. And until you do that, until you come to grips with the fact that the 3-day-a-week work week or the 4-day-a-week work week is a recipe for failed cities, we're just sort of sitting here. It's like sitting here treading water, knowing that we have a problem, but not actually doing anything about it. So that's my first pillar, like fix the commerce problem. And the second issue in San Francisco is the mayor and city supervisors, who either ought to resign or do their job. And if they're going to do their job, they ought to be rolling back all of these policies which permit people to, act poorly in public, to do drugs in public, to, urinate on the streets. My store, we have to wash the front of our store every day. The city has the ability to change the rules. There are 30,000 homeless people, or whatever the number is in San Francisco. It's a tragedy, and that number is probably larger in New York. Everybody who lives in these cities wants to do something to help those people that are in need of help. But their conduct and the permissibility of that conduct is destroying the quality of life so that no one wants to come into town anymore. People don't want to come there as a visitor. They don't want to come there for a conference. And that's got to stop. And so the fallacy that somehow allowing someone to shoot up in the streets or take a bath in the fountain below the Apple store because they're a homeless person, that just shouldn't be permitted. And you just have to change the rules and make it, you're breaking the law and you're going to go into jail. And you should not be able to camp on the streets anywhere in the city of San Francisco, anywhere. And you can draw a ring about where it goes. And if that means those folks have to move someplace else at night, then that's the way it is. But that's the only way that businesses and commerce can return. Pretty simple.
You have other ideas to save San Francisco now or other urban centers?
Well, I got one last one, which is on the transportation side. It's a little bit back to this concept of tyranny of the minority. We have tyranny in San Francisco, 30,000 people that live on the streets. We're more concerned about how they are than we are everybody else who's trying to conduct their lives. In New York City, we've allowed 50,000 bikers to take over 20% of the arterial roadways in the city of New York. I don't know who came up with that idea under Mayor Bloomberg, but it has created gigantic traffic problems. It's difficult now to go to the theater district. It's difficult to get anywhere in the town between
But their answer, of course, is this ridiculous project called congestion pricing. They don't understand that they're the proximate cause of the problem. The lawlessness discourages people from riding the subways and the buses. The bikes cut traffic mobility, and they want to tax people for coming in, which is another formula for disaster.
And what they're going to learn is the people who can not come in
they're
the very ones you need to come in. They're the people that are involved in commerce, that create the business, that create the jobs, and create the taxes. So there's this fallacy somehow that you can just do these things with no ramifications. The concept of New York City talking about congestion pricing at this moment in time is absurd.
Absolutely.
If you walk from 59th Street to 96th Street on Madison Avenue, one of the most expensive luxury retail shopping districts in the world, you have two empty storefronts on both sides of every single block. Every single block. In my 40 years of New York, I've never seen it look like that. So this is definitely the time that we should institute congestion pricing and have more people that have wealth and money and transact to not come. It's crazy. It's utter lunacy.
Jesse, your turn.
John, thank you for joining us. And I got to tell you, what you just outlined almost seems like a blueprint for the resurrection of our cities throughout the country, not just San Francisco. Because of what you described in San Francisco is exactly what's going on in cities like Chicago and other ones, and our beloved city of New York City and such. But here's one way, it seems like our elected officials, for one reason or another, whether it be in San Francisco, Chicago, New York City, are out of touch. They realize what the problems are. They understand that there are solutions that we can go forward with. What do you believe is what's holding them back from enacting these policy changes? Because I agree with you. I believe that COVID and then the overreach of some of our emergency powers that were granted to our governors and to our mayors and to our county executives have led to an entire new generation, a new group of people that do not want to work. They feel that they don't have to go into the offices. And I don't believe New York City, the retail market is now bouncing back as it should have, and certainly since from COVID. I mean, it's worse than even bouncing back from the time of, the attack on the World Trade Center in 2001.
I think the thing that prevents government officials from doing this is, in fact, the failure of media. Most of my adult life I've spent as a financial advisor to large media companies, local media in particular, television stations and newspapers, who for the longest time, decades and decades, they were the defenders of the local city, the defenders of last resort. If you're the ABC affiliate in San Francisco, you ought to be every single night of the week have this as the opening story. The CBS affiliate the same way, the NBC affiliate the same way. The problem is those local stations have increasingly become dominated by the political narrative of their parent networks. And I think it's fair to say that most of the parent networks have kind of gotten this mode of not, sort of taking sides on the political side. So if you call into question where the COVID policies were sensible, you're taking sides in some way. So I think the media has really done a horrible job criticizing local officials who should be thrown out of their jobs. I mean, quite honestly, the governor of California, the idea of people talking about the governor of California's political future nationally, when you go drive through San Diego, Los Angeles, and San Francisco and ask yourself the question whether those cities look like they're thriving. They're not. And so media needs to start beating the living tar out of the mayors and the city supervisors in all of these places. Seattle, just as bad as San Francisco in a lot of ways, maybe worse. Minneapolis, it's atrocious. I mean, the lawlessness in some of these cities, it's atrocious. And until local media starts to call to account the failure of these leaders, we live in sort of a tribal political society right now where you fall on one side of the aisle or the other, and man, you defend your side to the death instead of actually doing your job. That's what I think has happened.
Well, I think you're right about the media, and I can't tell you with any degree of certainty what's chicken, what's egg. But I'll tell you this, as the House Democrat, as the so-called common sense Democrat, I'm just aghast that the Democratic Party in this country and in the state and the city of New York, for example, which I know a great deal about, has been taken over by a left-wing fringe, a radical, so-called progressive fringe. Working Families Party controls them. Democratic Socialists control them. Being a socialist is not a bad term anymore. It's acceptable. The caucuses are driven by these fringes, and the primaries are really low turnout primaries. And then the fringes mobilize their forces, and they come out and they win the primaries. So there's no countervailing force within this. And then to add to that, in New York, and Jesse and I talk about this all the time, this is a one-party state in New York, and California is a one-party state. What do you say about that?
Well, and people get the government they deserve. I mean, in the end, this is the part that's going to be fascinating. Tax data lags by about 12 to 16 months before you really see what happened in a state. State of New York, 2021 tax data was pretty ugly compared to 2020, and you saw lots of wealthy people depart. I would make the statement halfway through 2023 that when the data comes out about 2022, it's going to take people's breath away. I'm a polling person of one, but I know the number of wealthy people I know who up and left and took their business and their chips, and they moved to their weekend home, or they moved to their home in Aspen or Jackson Hole or Florida or wherever they went, and they are not coming back because the quality of life in the cities has eroded. And I think when that data starts to come out, Governor Hochul, Governor Newsom, Governor Pritzker in Illinois, I mean, there's going to be some really ugly conversations because some of these cities are going to face what may be bankruptcies.
Well, remember, the federal money is running out, John and Jesse. The money is running out.
Well, and you have no possibility of the federal
Bailout?
authorities, signing up for. Oh yes, we're going to help bail out, these cities. And the fact of the matter is, I have a business in Salt Lake City. This is not monolithic across America. The great thing about America is you have all kinds of examples. I wrote a piece in the Wall Street Journal recently that we need a real independent look back panel about what did the COVID policies do. It was published a few weeks ago. And part of the problem is, as long as media is not covering these people, but the math is not going to lie. That's the problem. Math doesn't lie. And when the tax data comes in and we have humongous decline in tax revenues in the state of New York, watch out. And then there's going to be this giant, oh my gosh, what do we do? They ought to be doing it now. Governor Hochul, Governor Newsom, these governors ought to be doing it. And other states, other cities, Salt Lake City is booming. Texas is booming. Many of the states that did it differently and it put people back to work have gotten themselves back to functioning. It's the states that took this position of, don't come back to the office forever and ever. Man, is it going to be expensive to fix it.
Okay. Well, John?
If you're having problems with your septic system and you're tired of spending so much money each year to have it pumped, then SeptiClean is the answer for you. SeptiClean is an advanced specially formulated blend of bacteria used in the treatment of home and commercial septic systems. The breakdown of waste in your system relies on biological activity of naturally occurring bacteria. SeptiClean restores the natural biological process in your septic system and boosts the existing biological activity. SeptiClean is completely safe on all plumbing and can help prevent expensive emergencies in pumping. SeptiClean has approximately 6 to 100 times the bacteria count of other leading off-the-shelf brands in a 1-year supply. SeptiClean comes in a water-soluble pack, which you flush down the toilet once a month with no mess or stress. Save time, money, and maintenance on your septic system. Find SeptiClean at Emporium True Value Hardware on Main Street in Sag Harbor or visit micro-tab.com. That's micro-tabb.com. Micro-tabb.com.
My cat Freddie loves to be brushed and cuddled. But stirring up his cat allergens meant sneezing and itchy eyes. Then I found Purina One Live Clear. It's cat food that reduced the major allergen and my suffering in as little as 21 days. Now, we feel closer than ever. If you have issues with cat allergens, you really need to try Purina One Live Clear.
Try new Purina One Live Clear today. Purina One, a difference from day one.
How does PwC take your company to the leading edge? They bring the sharpest minds in tech to your team, so you can bring the ideas that will transform your business. They're passionate about your industry, so you can walk into any room with every advantage. And they're with you every step of the way, so you can know you're headed in the right direction. PwC builds for what's next, so you can get there now. Get started at pwc.com/us/leading edge.
I want to thank you very much, Jesse. I deeply appreciate you coming on. We've been speaking to John Chachas, who's an investment banker, finance expert, media expert, common sense guy, my neighbor here in the building where we operate WABC out of, and somebody who deeply cares about this country and deeply cares about the future of our cities. We've been very fortunate to have you on today. Jesse and I want to thank you again, and we hope to have you with us again in the not too distant future. Thank you very much, John.
Real pleasure. Nice to meet you, Jesse.
Thank you, John.
If you're having problems with your septic system and you're tired of spending so much money each year to have it pumped, then SeptiClean is the answer for you. SeptiClean is an advanced specially formulated blend of bacteria used in the treatment of home and commercial septic systems. The breakdown of waste in your system relies on biological activity of naturally occurring bacteria. SeptiClean restores the natural biological process in your septic system and boosts the existing biological activity. SeptiClean is completely safe on all plumbing and can help prevent expensive emergencies in pumping. SeptiClean has approximately 6 to 100 times the bacteria count of other leading off-the-shelf brands in a 1-year supply. SeptiClean comes in a water-soluble pack, which you flush down the toilet once a month with no mess or stress. Save time, money, and maintenance on your septic system. Find SeptiClean at Emporium True Value Hardware on Main Street in Sag Harbor or visit micro-tab.com. That's micro-tabb.com. Micro-tabb.com.